So guys, here is John Reagan. John is going to talk about his 600-mile spiritual journey and a whole lot more. Let's hold our questions to the end, and we'll get to John after that. So John, have at it, brother. Have at it.
Great, thanks, Ed. Yeah, how we doing, everybody? My name is John Regan. Um, I am a person in long-term recovery. We talked about recovery here. Um, I did. It's called the Camino de Santiago. It's out in Europe. I'll give you a little bit of history about it. It's 1,000 years old, and the route dates back to the ninth century. It starts in France, and it ends up in Santiago, which is Spain. It's a pilgrimage. It's rooted in the medieval times, like I said, and like it starts in Saint John, which is in France. You go over the Pyrenees Mountains, and you cross over almost the whole country of Spain to the Atlantic Ocean, and it leads to the tomb of Saint James, like I said, in Santiago. The Camino was and still is the oldest trade route in Europe. Um, and, it's the busiest, most well known, and it's the old Roman trade route. You start in the Atlantic Ocean, like I said, in Spain. You go across the country, you go up into France. If you keep going straight, you're going to hit Paris. If you go up and to the right, you're going to go to Rome. So anytime they were shipping stuff, they would do this Camino to ship goods. People would walk it, um, as a spiritual journey, to go to the cathedral at Santiago to visit the tomb of Saint James, which was an apostle of Jesus. He wrote one of the books in the Bible, the book of Saint James. So a lot of spiritual people walk this, and people walk it from all over the world. I've met people from many different countries. I'm still in contact with them today. I did this journey about 7 years ago when I turned 50, and there's many reasons why people do it. Younger people were doing it just to do it, before college. I met people who were actually dying of leukemia, who were looking to get healed. So people walk this thing for many reasons. And what you do is when you're walking this Camino, it's called the Cruz de Ferro, which is the highest point in Spain on a mountain. And they have 100-foot pole with a cross at the top. And you take a stone, your prayer stone, and it's like you have a wish, and you put it at the foot of the cross. And whatever you need in life, whatever you're asking God, whether it's a job or for healing, if you are dying of something, like I said, I met people from all over the world, and people walked it for different reasons. But the legend has it that if you put a stone at the foot of the cross, and you believe in your heart and soul and it's God's will, that if you walk this whole Camino, it's going to be granted. And I saw it on a YouTube video. This guy was talking about he did the Camino. He was dying of leukemia, and he walked this whole journey. And a month later, he went back to the doctors, and it was going away. And eventually he was healed of it. And he went to the doctors and stuff, and nobody can help him out. So as a last resort, he walked this Camino. So I was turning 50, like I said, it was 7 years ago. I was turning 50, and I listened to this YouTube video. I was sitting at the kitchen table, and I'm like, well, what do I want in life? What kind of miracle am I looking for? I was kind of at a crossroads. I was doing marketing and stuff, and it really wasn't my thing, and I really wasn't very good at it. I could go visit places, but I wasn't very good. So I was like, my career was stalling. I was kind of in between things. I had some time. I was turning 50. So my wife and I were planning on doing a small part of it, like 100 miles, and you get a certificate. And, it's still 5 days out there, 5 or 6 days. So that was our plan. We were going to do that on vacation. But because I heard this video, my wife called me and was like, John, like, what do you want to do for your 50th birthday? And I said, I want to go out to the Camino 3 weeks before you, and I want to walk this whole thing. And she's like, are you out of your mind? Like, why would you want to walk this whole thing? Like, number one, I don't think you're going to make it, 3 weeks to get me for that last 100 miles. I don't think you're going to make it. Um, you're 50 years old. It's a full backpack, and but lucky for me, with the running and stuff. So I always had some decent conditioning anyway. I didn't train enough for the backpack, because it turns into the devil. Like the smallest thing, like if you hold a glass of water, like for a short period of time, not a big deal, and a glass of water is like light. Try holding it for a couple hours; it gets really heavy. It's only a cup. Picture, a 30 pound, behind you, carrying it. Um, it became, very heavy. But yeah, so my wife called me and was like, okay, so for your 50th birthday, you want to go out there rather than renting a hall? And I'm like, yeah. So, that brings me to start off the story. Back in 2016, I was in a doctor's office, in the hospital. And, my daughter was getting her third surgery. She has endometritis, and it was her third surgery. And, the doctor came out after her surgery and said, she's good. We had to scrape the walls of her uterus, and but I'm letting you know that there's like a 90% chance that your daughter can't have children. Um, and to me, I saw my daughter, as a mom. She was, um, like 29 at the time, and I said to the doctor, I'm like, okay, well, do you have to tell her? I mean, I know you told me, and because I don't like putting that belief in people's heads because there's still a 10% chance. So, I asked the doctor, not to, not to say anything to her. Whether he did or didn't, I don't know. But I never said anything to my daughter. I never told my daughter that the doctor told me that. Which brings me to like a year later. My son-in-law, Mike, took me out to lunch. And he asked me to marry my daughter. And, as a father and, as a decent human being, I wanted to let him know that, hey, I need to let you know what a doctor told me. He told me that, Chris, there's a 90% chance that she can't have children. And I know you want to get married and stuff, but I thought that, that you should know if children are in your future, that there's a 90% chance that she can't have children. I don't know if she's ever told you that. And he said, no. And he said, it doesn't matter to me. I love her and we'll adopt, if we can't have children and stuff. But I really wanted him to know, that there's a good chance that he won't be having, children, with my daughter. So, they got married and everything, about 6, 7 months later, they did get married. So 2 weeks later after their marriage, I went out on the Camino. I trained for it. Like I said, I actually gained weight to go out because I knew I was going to lose weight. Um, I didn't know I was going to lose 31 pounds in 35 days. And I did eat a lot. They had pilgrims meals. So I ate a lot. It's just going up and down mountains and, doing 15 to 20 miles a day. It really took a lot out of me, and I did. I kept a journal. So with the 35 days, I'm going to say I suffered for 21 of those days. 13 days, were manageable. But there was 21 days I was out there, and I mean suffered to the point where you step, it's like a shooting pain going up your leg. I had different pains, different days, shin splints, blisters, all kind of stuff happened to me while I was out there. And the reason why I wanted to do it was, my wish was going to be for my daughter to have children. If it's God's will, I'm going to walk this Camino. I'll live a life under your direction, God. If it's your will, please let my daughter have children. And that's my why of going out there. That was the miracle that I was looking for. And I never told anybody. I never told my wife. I never told my kids. That was between me and my higher power. That I'm going to walk this whole thing, and if it's your will, just let my daughter, have just one child. And that's what I was looking for. So, we made the arrangements for me to go out. I was going to land in Portugal from the United States to Portugal, and then from Portugal I had a connecting flight to France, to St. John's. The starting point. So I get to Newark Airport, getting ready to go to Portugal. I give my passport and it's saying declined. And I'm like, well, what do you mean declined? They're like, well, you should have renewed it. I'm like, there's still 4 months on my passport. But to travel overseas, you need at least 6 months on there. Like I had no idea. So I'm like, where's the cameras? Because I'm on pumped. I thought it was a joke at first. And they're like, no. And it was a Friday. And I was like, well, when's the next flight? It's Monday. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to get my passport. I need a flight for Monday. So they were able to get me a flight for Monday. And it's like, it's impossible to get a passport in one day. Um, so I made some calls that Friday, and I had to go into New York City to get it. Um, it was extremely difficult. I had to get my birth certificate from Perth Amboy, and then took the train into the city, grabbing cabs. I go in. They were like, "Well, you can't get it in a day." And for me, it's lucky I was on the governor's council for addiction. So I knew some politicians. I'm like, "Well, can you call these people and they can verify who I am?" So I don't know who they talked to, but I was able to actually get it. It's my first miracle. I was actually able to get it in one day, but I had to be to the airport at 5 o'clock in Newark. So I have this backpack in New York City, grabbing cabs, running down the street, trying to get to Newark Airport, and I just got to the gate before they were closing the door. So that's like my second miracle. My story it just has a ton of different miracles of things that happen. So I was able to get on the flight. I landed in Portugal, and the next issue that I ran into, I didn't have a connecting flight anymore because it was a different airline, and it was only $50. Once you're in Europe, you could get some cheap transportation if you book it in advance. So I had from Portugal to France, it was something like only $75. So I'm like, I'll figure it out. So anyway, I didn't have a connecting flight anymore. So I had no idea how I was getting to France. But, I had faith that, okay, I'm going to land there. And then what happened was the language barrier. Like, I don't speak Portuguese. So, I'm trying to get a connecting flight, and it was like $600. And I'm like, $600? There's only 75. But there was no, there was no room on those flights because you have to book them in advance. So I took an all night train, which was pretty cool. So from Portugal, didn't speak the language. I finally, met a travel agent who helped me out. And I call her my angel from Portugal because she was able to get me on an all-night train. So I went from Portugal across Spain, slept on the train. It was an experience. It was like Harry Potter. And there's 4 bunk beds, and could hear strangers snoring. It was pitch black, and you wake up, and you know, I went into the lunch car, and just viewing the views of Spain, and then got into France, and so I got into France. Walked to my starting point, which is called an albergue. So I started talking to people the night before. I started my backpack journey. So there's people from all over the world. So I was talking to this guy from Ireland who actually walked it backwards. So he walked the whole thing. Gave me some tips and advice and stuff like that. And so that morning I woke up. I actually drank my coffee out of a bowl. And oatmeal. They'll give you a little food. You pay $8 to stay overnight, and they'll give you a little food in the morning. So I actually drank instant coffee out of a bowl, and a little bit of oatmeal and stuff. But I had granola bars and whatnot, and I started out on my journey, which was from in France. It was my first day was about 20 miles. I finished off at a church in Spain, so I crossed the border in one day. They said I should have done it in 2 days, but I'm like, well, I knew the miles and stuff, and I wanted to get a good jump, and rather than listening to people that have done it, I went up the Pyrenees Mountains, and the whole time it was like straight up. I have this backpack. I'm trying to keep the weight off, um, just sweating. And in the back of my head, I'm like, how in the hell did Napoleon get his army with cannons over this mountain? Because it was like straight up, and So anyway, I got up this mountain and down below to where the church was in Spain, and it was like extremely difficult. So I got to the church, and it was just crowded with people. There's hundreds of people walking this journey at a time. So I got to stay at a church the first day. Met people from all over the world. Again, had something to eat. Attended a church service over there. There's a lot of churches in these Europe towns in Spain. There's a church in every town. So um, they did something called the pilgrim. That's what they call you. It's a pilgrimage. So you get the pilgrim's blessing. So for safe journey and good health and stuff. And I woke up the next day, my knees were swollen, from the whole journey. But just kept it moving. But the night before, after church, I met a Christian monk who was from China, and he asked me to wake up early with him and climb a mountain and watch the sunrise and meditate with him. And I'm a horrible meditator because in my mind I have like ADD and I can't sit still and I'm always moving around. So this Christian monk is trying to teach me how to meditate, and it's pitch black. We had the lamps on. And then the sun started coming up, so I'm like meditating, and I'm fidgeting around. And he's like, "Papa, papa, that's not like that." And breathe, and so I actually started meditating with this monk, and I saw the most beautiful sunrise I've ever seen in my life. Come up. It was again one of those magical moments that we're talking about. I've seen a lot of sunrises, on the beach and stuff, but for whatever reason, this was just magical. It was like a different color that I've never seen. It's like purplish coming up. And I wanted to take a picture. I was so thankful for this monk giving me this experience. I wanted to take a picture. He said, no pictures. Remember me in your heart. I don't want you to have a picture of me. I always want you to remember me in your heart and in your mind. Which to this day, I still remember exactly what he looks like. I remember how tall he was. And he gave me a gift. The symbol of the Camino was a clamshell. So he actually made his own clamshell out of tin, and then a hammer, and it was had on a piece of rope, and he gave it to me as a gift. And I wanted to give him a gift, and he no gift. This experience was good. So I actually have that clamshell today that he gave me, and I wore it the whole journey, the rest of the 34 days. I still have that gift from him, and I still remember it. Like I said, still remember what he looked like, and he was like, no pictures. So then I got to to the next town, and what you do is you have a map with you, so you know where the towns are, you know where you're going to end up, and I just kept walking, and the next town was Pamplona, where the running of the bulls are. In Spain, people that run down the street, the bulls are chasing. It's quite popular. But I was there about a week after, but there was still a lot of people, so they weren't running the bulls because there was a lot of people. And again, I kept meeting people during this walk. People say "buen camino," which is have a good camino. People say it all the time, and there's no strangers there. It's like these people, so you're walking the same speed as people, and you just start talking to them. And the good thing with Europe, there's people from different countries, but probably 80 to 90% of people speak English, which is amazing. So I was able to talk to people. And at these places that you stay, with their food, they have these big long tables that you sit at, and there's bunk beds everywhere. So you pay your €10 a night. That'll get you a bunk bed and one meal, which is the pilgrim's meal. There's always meat, usually eggs, a salad, and a dessert and a glass of wine. And I was in recovery, so I wasn't drinking. Or you could have water, or a Diet Coke or something. But that was included. So you get a meal and a place to stay. So I was staying at these albergues, and sometimes it was in a room of 4 people, and the largest was I was in a room of about 140 people at a big church. You have to bring earplugs because people snore, people talk in their sleep. I didn't sleep very well, probably for the first week, because you're uncomfortable, you're with strangers, people snore. But when you get dog tired, you're walking 15 to 20 miles, you do get tired. And again, I have a couple notes of people that I did, but I met different people every single day, and it was always a lesson that I learned. I walked with a French guy one time who didn't speak a lick of English, and I didn't know any French. But we were walking, up and down these mountains, and all we did, we were walking the same pace. We were about the same age, and we just kept pointing. Wow, look over there. Wow, look over there. Sat down for lunch. I had a loaf of bread that I bought, that you cut up. He had something called chorizo, which is, Spanish sausage. He had a cutting board, so he cut the meat. I shared the bread, and we were sharing food, and couldn't talk and communicate. Just sitting, sharing life, sharing the beauty of where we were walking. it was just incredible. I mean, Spain is a beautiful country. So I got to, to walk with the guy from France. Um, and then, as we were walking, I was walking with a group of people that I got to talk to. We kind of knew where we were going to end up. We were probably about 4 miles away from where we were going to stay. And this guy from Denmark, I still remember his name. His name is Casper. Started getting shooting pains in his leg, and he actually, like kind of blew his knee out. Walking down. People were usually getting hurt on their way down from these mountains, not necessarily up. So he blew his knee out, and we were with a group. So the group was like, "We're going to push up," and I'm like, "Well, no, I'm going to stay with this guy," because they're like, "Well, and he was like, "No," he was a younger guy. He goes, "No, I can make it," and stuff. And I told him, I'm like, in the United States, we don't leave people behind. If someone's in need, we don't leave people behind in the United States. So, I stayed with him, helped him limp along for a couple miles, and, I was able to get him, but his Camino was over. He blew his knee out. But there was also, when you're walking, there was like these rock memorials. I don't know if there's any hikers here, but people make, I don't know what it is. They make like a rock tower. So when it snows, you can kind of see. But there was no snow out there. People were just making rock memorials out of rock, in remembrance of somebody. And some were shaped like pyramids, some were square, some were just a stack of rocks. So I actually, just followed tradition and made all my own, um, my own rock. And I took pictures, and like I said, I did have a journal, and but 15 to 20 miles a day, in the beginning, I was starting to get blisters. When you stay at these albergues, they have medical people actually take care of your blisters for you. Um, there's a lot of people walking this, and they would take care of the blisters. And then, on day 8, I was walking, and I met a guy from North Korea, and he had leukemia, and he was looking to be healed. He didn't walk very well, so I walked in the morning with him, and we stopped in churches. There was churches on, you saw at least 1 to 2 churches every day. So he asked me, will you stop in a church and pray? And I said, yeah. And I've been to church, since I'm a little kid. I grew up Catholic. I went to a Catholic school, before high school, and I've prayed a lot. But when you're praying with a man that's actually dying, it's a different type of prayer. I never heard a human being pray like that in my life. Um, and again, it's one of those experiences. If you want to pray and know how to really pray with someone that's dying, because those are heartfelt, real connection, with the Almighty. So I went into 2 churches with him. He was really sick towards the end of the day, so he had to take a cab, to the next town. I thought I was going to see him, but I never saw him again. Whether he got his miracle or not, I know he couldn't walk the whole thing. Uh, but I do believe that hopefully he was found the healing that he was looking for. Um, but I've met so many people. I met a couple days later. I met a father with his son. They were from England. The son was 16. Was getting into drugs and trouble. The father worked all the time, so he quit his job, and he begged his son to walk this whole Camino with him, so they can connect on the Camino. Um, I met, a family from Mexico, who were just walking a little bit. There was people who were walking the whole thing, and it was people just walking a small section. And like I said, people walked it for different reasons. My goal was to walk the whole thing, and like I said, I was in a lot of pain, um, for those 21 days. I met someone from Australia. Her name is Madeline. Um, she was walking in remembrance of her mother, who died 20 years. It was the 20-year anniversary of her mother. So she was 28 years old, and 8 years old when her mother died. So to remember her mom, she was walking this whole Camino as a charity walk. And her whole town in Australia was watching her. And she was overweight. Um, and, it was like day 8, when I met her. And, she was out of gas. She's like, I can't do it. And she's crying. Um, and I was like, well, you have to. I'm like, the whole town is watching you. You're raising money in remembrance of your mother. She's like, I can't, I can't. And I'm like, you can. And I'm like, I'll help you, walk through it and stuff like that. You have to. The whole town is watching. So she would make her posts on Facebook, and there was like 400 or 500 likes. Like literally, this whole town in Australia was watching her walk this whole thing, and she was overweight, and I think she lost like 40 or 50 pounds at the end, and I'm still in contact with her, and I spent a lot of time with her talking to her. Her goal was to help children in Tanzania to learn how to read in English. So, after the Camino, you get to see what people do, and it's amazing. I met so many people who had these hopes and dreams on the Camino, and here it is 7 years later, and you're looking on Facebook, and you see pictures of their dreams actually coming true. So she did teach in Tanzania. She did, work for a nonprofit out there and help poor people, to see all her dreams come true. That's the magic of the Camino, which again, I have a lot of other stories from people that I met. I developed shin splints, so I met this girl Jamie she was from Australia. She used something called magic tape, I call it. It's tape that you tape muscles. Because I was limping, and she's a physical therapist. She's like, well, I'm like, well, what's all over your leg? She goes, it's tape. You put this tape on certain pressure points, and I'm like, that doesn't work. And she's like, if you go to a pharmacy and buy tape, I'll tape you up. And I'm telling you, my shin splint on my right leg is like twice the size of the other. Um, every time I stepped, it was excruciating pain. And I'm like, okay, I'll try anything. So I got this tape, and I think they call it K tape, I believe. Um, so she taped me up and hit these pressure points. Like I said, she's a physical therapist, and she said, go ahead and walk. It, it was like Jesus himself healed me. I was stepping with no pain. And I'm like, how is this possible with the pressure points and how this tape was? And I have pictures on my leg. It was all taped up and stuff like that. And I call it, the miracle tape, which was another, miracle for me. So about 3/4 of the way through, I came up to the Cruz de Ferro. Like I said, it's the highest point in Spain. Um, at the foot of the cross, I did have a stone with me. I've been to Ireland, and where my family's from, there was a castle and stuff like that. So I was actually able to get a small stone from the castle, and take it as a souvenir. It was on the ground, so when I was in Ireland, I picked it up. So I always saved the stone. I don't know why. I always saved it. That was going to be my prayer stone to lay at the cross and ask for my daughter to have children. So in the morning, the sun was coming up. I was able to lay, my prayer stone down, um, and ask. I asked for a few things. I asked that, that my daughter can have at least one child. My second wish was that, addiction stops with me. Um, I'm a person in long-term recovery. I have 5 children. My second one was, that addiction stops with me. And the third one was, that my children, if they choose to get married, that they marry well, because it's a life decision. I went through a divorce, 18 years ago, and that's what really started the heavy drinking, for my alcoholism. It was so painful. So that was my third thing, was that that they marry well and they don't have to go through that pain of divorce. So that was basically my three things that I was looking for. And when you're crossing the country of Spain, you hit different, you hit mountain areas, and then I hit something called the desert of Spain. It's dry, it's flat, there's nothing out there, and most people that were walking took a bus. And I wasn't cheating my, I was walking the whole thing. So I walked with these young 3 Italian guys who were in great shape. They were from Italy, and there was people from different countries. It was so hot that day. We had a goal to get to this certain town, and about 5 miles away, people stopped for lunch. It was so hot, nobody wanted to cross the rest of the desert to the next town, except for these 3 young Italian guys who were in great shape. And they're like, well, we're walking, the hair slicked back, they had the sunglasses on. They were like, well, who's going? Hey, you from Spain? Are you going? Hey, you from Wales or Ireland? Are you going? No, no, we're not pushing. So I was the only American around, and one of the guys were like, hey, USA. Is the United States of America crossing the desert today? I stand up. I'm like, you're damn freaking right I am. So, I stood up, and, I was walking with him. And then there was a guy drinking at the cafe. drinking beer and stuff. He was from Spain, and he's like, yeah, yeah, I'll go with you. So, it was the five of us were walking, and people walk at different speeds. So, they were like ahead of me, and I'm like, listen, I'm pushing too hard. It's hot. I'm going to hold back. And they told me, the Italian guys told me, they were like, listen, we'll hang out for a little bit when we get to the town, but if you don't get here by a certain time, we're gonna come out and look for you and stuff. Um, so I'm walking, I'm walking by myself. It was hot as hell. And I'm looking, I could see the vapors coming up. And I saw one tree. There was no trees. I saw one tree out, and I saw this orange shirt. And it was the Spanish guy, the guy from Spain. And he was under the tree. So I walk over there. He's like, I'm out of water. I was drinking beer. I'm dehydrated. He was like ready to black out. So I shared my water with him, and I'm trying to, help him out. We're both ready to collapse, because I'm trying to drag him across the desert. And I'm kind of looking in the distance, and I see these three Italian guys walking towards us, and they actually scooped us up and helped us get to to get to the town and stuff. So they did, and like I said, I met people from all over the world, like the nicest people. We were all in it together. But yeah, those guys from Italy came out, helped us in the next town, and the town was empty because it was only us five. Everybody else flooded the town before because it was just too hot. So I met the Italian guys, and then with about a couple of days went on, and my thing was just keep moving. Did I ever think about quitting? No. But I was in a lot of pain. Um, every day I met, a different lesson or met somebody new. But for, again, the last 100 miles, I met my wife, Anna, who we were supposed to finish off the Camino with. So I met her with about 100 miles left. The people that I were walking, they pushed ahead because I had to wait for one day for Anna because, she wanted to get a certificate. So we had to be at least 100 miles away. So the people that I was walking with, they pushed ahead by a day. So I met my wife, Anna. We walked for 5 days, about 10 to 15 miles a day. I told my wife what to bring, so she had a very light pack. Everybody I knew lightened their pack in some way. And, I stopped and I'm looking in the woods. I'm walking with my wife on day one, and she's like, well, my wife had a walking stick, which is her father's walking stick in Spain. It's a pretty common thing to walk with a stick. So, I'm looking in the woods and I'm looking for this walking stick. So I can't find a stick. So we're walking in town, and there was an old guy walking with a crutch, and he only spoke Spanish. So my wife speaks Spanish because she's from Spain. I was talking to him, and this guy's just handing me his crutch, his stick. And I'm like, Anna, what's he doing? He's saying that he wants to give you this stick. And he wants you to give it to the bishop at the church in Santiago. I told him we're going to Santiago, and he's telling me to deliver the stick to the bishop. And I'm just getting chills. And I'm thinking, I'm looking for a walking stick. And here's a guy who doesn't speak English handing me his walking stick on how he got around. And, so I took the stick and, I walked with it for 5 days until we got to Santiago. And, my wife is from Spain and her parents still live there. So, we finally finished in Santiago. It was such a relief, to get to Santiago. And then there's 2 more pilgrimages after you get to Santiago. You can walk to Murcia, which is along the Atlantic Ocean, which when they made maps, they thought it was the farthest point of Europe to the Atlantic Ocean, but it turns out that Finisterre is. So there's a path that you could get to Murcia after the cathedral to do another Camino. My wife was done after 100 miles, so she was done. So she went with her parents. She went home. I stayed in Santiago, and I was going to go on a 3-day journey to Murcia, and then from Murcia to Finisterre, which is another day. So my Camino wasn't over. I was like, you know what? I'm out in Europe. I did the Camino to Santiago, but there's 2 more Caminos that are attached with it to walk to the Atlantic Ocean. And it's desolate. Not a lot of people do it. The trails are marked. So anyway, I went to the church service in the morning, and I handed this bishop, I was by myself, the stick, and I told him the story. He spoke English, that this guy 4 days ago handed me the stick. He wanted to give it as a gift to the church in memories of his wife that passed away. And, the priest took the stick, and when he did mass, he walked out with my walking stick, and these cathedrals are full in the morning. Um, People are very religious out there. And he told the story of the American that was walking in Spain and was handed the stick, and it's a gift to the church. And he said, and as a church, they wanted to give the gift back to me as a gift to remember Spain and the Camino. So the bishop actually gave me this stick back. And then, I continued on my journey after the church, walking with my stick. And then the later church services, the bishop was saying that there's an American walking with this stick, and it was blessed by the church. And people were actually catching up to me. Younger kids were catching. Oh, are you the American with the walking stick? Can we walk with your stick? It was blessed by the church, and so it kind of had like a mythical feel to it. Which was pretty cool. Um, so I continued to walk towards the Atlantic Ocean, and like I said, there wasn't a lot of people, but everybody knew about the stick. And I'm like, well, how do you know about the stick? Like, it was a day ago. People were texting each other, um, you know, looking for the American with the stick. Everybody wanted to walk with the walking stick. It was blessed by the Bishop of Spain. People are very Catholic and religious out there. So I was walking with people who just wanted to walk, with my stick. So, I would stay at different albergues, and then it got really desolate, and I was walking by myself, and um, there was a boar, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take a picture. I've never seen a wild boar before, and I took a picture, and this thing turned and started running at me, with horns and stuff. So it was like a movie. You see, here I am with a backpack trying to run away from this boar. I'm looking around, this thing's gaining on me. I throw my backpack down, and the thing's still chasing me. So I have my walking stick, and I turned around, and I hit this wild boar with my walking stick. And, people actually I didn't know it, people get gored to death by a wild boar. It can actually kill you. Um, but again, one of the miracles of the Camino, I always said that the Camino will provide. And, here I am getting handed this walking stick, that I gave to the church. It was blessed by the church. And here, this wild animal was chasing me. And I actually had a weapon to beat it off. I was handed a weapon on this. And, one of the lessons was, the Camino will always supply anything I needed, whether it was a place to stay, whether it was water, whether I needed someone to talk to. I always had what I needed, and I never had anxiety. Like, I'll have anxiety during the day, like even today. There'll be certain anxieties or whatever. All that walking and not knowing where I was sometimes, I never had anxiety. I always felt that there was something watching me, or something comforting me. I always had what I needed, and I needed the stick, and I actually, I have the stick obviously still, and there's a mark on my stick. You can see where I hit the tusk of the boar. So I hit the boar, and it rolled down. It kind of ran away from there. But I actually made it to the Atlantic Ocean, which is the farthest point of Spain. Finished the walk 100%. I was done. And then by tradition, what you do is, you hang your clothes out. So I walked down on the cliffs, which is overhanging. I have pictures and everything of, you take your clothes off, you jump in the Atlantic Ocean, you cleanse off your sins. You hang your clothes that you wore during the Camino and your shoes, you leave it outside. So what I did was I climbed out on the rocks, grabbed the stick, and I hung everything out like a flag. And it was out on the farthest point of Europe. I let it sit there overnight. Went out in the morning, and then there was a big bonfire because people on the Camino, you burn your clothes, and you watch the smoke go up, and it's like watching your sins go up into heaven, and everything is forgiven. And that tradition's been going on for 1,000 years. People have been doing that. So again, in the morning, I grabbed my clothes and stuff, and they had a big bonfire. And, I burnt all my stuff. I saw the smoke rise. Hopped on a bus to where my wife was in Spain. And we flew back to America. Like I said, I suffered 21 days out of the 35. I lost 31 pounds in 35 days. And I ate a lot. I could still, talk for the people that I met, because like I said, I kept a journal. There's so many people that I can mention, that I met. And like I said, there's people who I've talked to, and I know what their hopes and dreams are. Like Ed, you were asking people like what do you want to do? What's holding you back? and to hear all these stories of people, what they wanted to do, and actually see them actually accomplish it 7 years later. I shared what I wanted to do. I wanted to help homeless people. I was in the addiction industry, doing outreach, but I really wanted to work with people that were homeless. That was my why. That was my dream of what I wanted to do, while I was out there. So, I get home and, I'm waiting for the miracle to happen. My daughter's married and here I am. I walked all of this and, kept the faith and, went to church and, and helped people along the Camino. And, as the months went by, I'm, just waiting for that call from my daughter, like, hey, Dad, I'm pregnant, and I'd be like, we had a deal and stuff. And, just kept waiting and nothing happened, and here it is, like a year later and nothing. I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's, just not God's will and stuff like that. So, um, when I did what I didn't mention, I laid the stone down, which is August 4th, 2016. I laid the stone down for the cross at the Cruz de Ferro. That's my sobriety date, which is August 4th. Um, so, it's kind of ironic that I was able to, to put that stone down on my sobriety date. Um, so anyway, so, I'm back in the United States, and I'm waiting. It's been over a year. Um, so then, I get a call from my daughter. I went to work and, I came home and it was August 4th, a year later. And, my daughter called me on August 4th. I laid the stone down 7 in the morning. My daughter called me August 4th, a year later, 7 o'clock at night, and told me she was pregnant. And, that's kind of where, it's a spiritual thing. And I'm actually talking about it. The hair on my arm is going up because what's the chances, on that date, exactly 1 year later, 7 in the morning, 7 at night, just, my daughter saying that, she's pregnant. And I was like, wow, my miracle. And it was a tough pregnancy. She almost lost the baby a couple times. She was bleeding so bad, a couple months that the doctor saw her and said that she had a miscarriage. And, I told my daughter, okay, I'll come visit you. And here I am, thought she had a miscarriage. And I'm taking a shower. And, now I'm mad at God. We had a deal. And so I get out of the shower. My daughter calls me back. She's like, I had an ultrasound. The baby's still there. And I'm like, hey, never mind what I said, you know. But yeah, so my daughter, told me she was pregnant on August 4th. Um, on April 13th, 2018, my granddaughter Rosie was born, and that's my miracle. And I never told my daughter that I walked this whole journey. I never told her. Until after my granddaughter was born. I told her on the day she was born that, I walked this Camino, um, so you can have a child and, whether that was it or not. But I never told my wife. I never told anybody. That was like my secret. And I told my daughter the day my granddaughter was born on why I walked this and I got my miracle. And then, 3 months after, my granddaughter was born, we were out at a dining room with my daughter, my wife, her husband, and the newborn baby, and she told me, that she's pregnant again. Um, so then, June 3rd, 2019, my grandson Michael was born. So not only did my daughter have one child, she had two, which it's like a miracle. Um, and then unfortunately, like 3 months later, after, my grandson Michael was born, my daughter had to have a hysterectomy. Her insides were so bad and it was so painful that she had to get a hysterectomy. So, she was able to have two children, which I'm so grateful for, that she was able to have children. But, that's, kind of, my story, that's what happened out there. That was my miracle. And, is there a God? Yes, absolutely. I felt God all the time I was out there. I felt the protection, so many lessons being out there. And, what did I do with my life after the Camino? Because, the real Camino starts, when you get home. I mean, you could be on a spiritual walk and get all this insight. And like I said, I have a journal. I have some thoughts that I'll share, some lessons that I learned out there. But on a personal level, what did I do? Well, I got back and just in prayer and meditation, I got to work with the homeless. I started working at Edith's Village in Patterson, in New Jersey. Helping people out there. So, what I've done, I've gotten the Community Champion Award from the New York Giants in 2021. Um, for street outreach, helping people who are homeless. I got the Monsignor Puma Award, which is in Patterson. Um, that was for my street outreach. I was awarded the Bloomberg grant for $1 million for the city of Patterson with the ORT, the Opiate Response Team. I started that in Patterson. Michael Bloomberg gave us $1 million for that outreach to keep it going. That was back in 2021. From working in the city over the past 4 years, I put 456 people off the street into detox, 220 into a MAT program, another 200 off the streets into shelters over the course of 4 years. I served myself over 12,000 meals in the streets in Newark and different outreaches. And even with my job now, I started to write grants on street outreach and helping people who are homeless. And so we were awarded a $1.2 million grant that I wrote. We got that about 3 months ago. It's a recovery management checkup. It's for people who come out of treatment. We actually put a recovery specialist with them. And I actually wrote the grant. I had people helping me write the grant, but that was for $1.2 million. And we were just awarded B Corps, which is Building Communities of Recovery, to train people in 7 counties up in New Jersey. We just were awarded a $3 million grant for 2024. So with grant writing, I've been able to raise millions of dollars. And if I look back 7 years ago, you don't see this kind of stuff happening. But it's about making up your mind on what you want to do. So not only did I get my miracle on the Camino, with grandchildren, which was my miracle. I was able to take a step back. What do I really want to do? And I really wanted to help people, who were less fortunate, who were hungry, who were homeless, addicted. And I took a very low paying job in the beginning, and I just excelled at it. And I went from sweeping the floor to 5 months later of running the recovery center. 5 months later, I was that passionate about it. To turning into the director, and then into my position now. I'm in the 7 northern counties of New Jersey. Writing grants, going out in the streets, helping people. That's what I'm passionate about. So I'm actually, the question was that, like, what's your dream and what do you want to do? I'm actually living, for the first time, and it happened at 50 years old. You never know until you get in the game. What you think you want to do, jump in and do it. And I just want to, just real quick, I had a journal and just some of the lessons, that I learned on the Camino from running into the different people. One of the lessons was, you learn to find meaning in the suffering. Another lesson, keep going and never quit. It's all about the journey and not the destination. I was writing this stuff like each night. I had a journal. And when I was done, I would journal at night. Like, what did I learn? And these are all my lessons. There is no rich or poor on the Camino. When you meet new people, they never ask what I did for a living or how much money. They were like, tell me about where you live in the United States. Tell me about the town or village you're from. Tell me about your family. Like, what's it like in America? It was deep questions. It was never how much money did you make? Are you rich or poor? What do you do for a living? Another lesson, we don't need a lot to survive. I was out there for 35 days with just a backpack and the clothes on my back. Be grateful. You're grateful with a shower, food, drink. That was what you were looking for while you were walking. That shower, food, and drink at the end. Acceptance. You got to learn to accept the pain. Tranquility. Being on the Camino, you learn that you don't have to have the same distractions. You just keep your inner peace. The Camino is about discovering yourself, your feelings, and your inner peace. You only need a few things to survive. It's about the people from all over the world who will share you with their experiences. It's about the stunning landscape that you're going to see. It's about learning to deal with pain and pushing through the pain. A few more lessons. The Camino taught me about grieving. You have a lot of time to think about with yourself. So I was able to grieve about, my parents dying, my divorce, my addiction issues, my marriage that didn't work, and letting my kids down. When I drank, I really let my kids down. So I was able to process a lot of that stuff while I was out there by myself. I learned that there's only one religion, and that's love. I learned that there's only one language, and that's the language of the heart. It's what's in your heart that matters. There's only one race in the world, and that's the human race. We're all human. I met many cultures and people of different color out there, and what I learned is there's only one race, and that's the human race. There's only one God, and God is everywhere. And there's only 4 human needs for survival. And if you have these 4 things, you have everything you need. That's what I learned out in Camino when you have nothing, which is love, food, water, and shelter. If you have those, you have everything you need, and everything else is just icing on the cake. Another thing that I learned, you will lighten your pack. So the backpack's like a metaphor in life. Every single person I know that walked this made it lighter. I made it lighter. You find out what you need, to keep going and keep moving. Every single person I met made it lighter. For me, I got rid of half my clothes. There was some guy who was poor. He was in front of the church. He was my size. I handed him half my clothes because I didn't need it. I knew what I needed after about a week. And like I said, every single person, we were carrying too much, and we do that in life. We carry too much stuff. You got to learn to make it lighter. You got to learn to let things go. I let go of clothes. I only had what I needed. So every single person, made their pack lighter. All that matters when you're out there is just to keep going. Another metaphor in life, just keep it moving. When things are bad, just keep it moving. Just take one step at a time. And remember, baby steps count too. Sometimes we think we're not moving fast enough. 1 step up, 2 down, but even baby steps count too. Everybody walked a different emotional path, and they walked the Camino for different reasons. Another lesson, pain is always expected. Another great lesson, there are no strangers. You will always meet a Camino family. Like I said, I was never alone. People I was walking, I would just start talking to people. People would just walk up and just start talking to me. It was like your Camino family, when you were out there. And like I said, one of my biggest lessons is, the Camino will provide. I was never had anxiety out there. I always got what I needed. And then, one final thought is, every step I took towards Finisterre, which is the Atlantic Ocean, was a step towards my own destiny. And it's a story that, that I have and, that I could share with the world. I did keep journals, and, this is my story. I did get my miracle, why I did go out there. But not only the miracle, but the miracle of who I am and what kind of work I wanted to do. And it wasn't only me. Like I said, I met, 30, 40 people. And to see them on Facebook, and I'm still connected with everybody, to see that they're living what they talked about me. I mean, they had no idea what they just gave me a thought. I think I want to do this, or I want to give this a try. And to see, Madeline, who's a school teacher in Tanzania, just like she said, teaching English, teaching kids how to read, the poor people. But that's, I know it was a little lengthy, and I could have kept, I cut a lot of stuff out, but there's so many lessons out there. But thanks for letting me share it. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Great story. Appreciate it.